Welcome to a new episode of the Sustainable Living Podcast. As demand for energy storage grows, it's becoming clear that we need technologies that are not only efficient, but also safe, sustainable, and resilient. Today, we're exploring one of the biggest questions in the energy transition. What comes after lithium? To help us unpack this topic, I'm delighted to welcome Jean-Luc Cialdini, CEO of EasylZinc. Jean-Luc, welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And Nicoleta, it's very a pleasure to be a part of your podcast. You have a good reputation, so I'm very glad to be able to have this discussion with you.
Before we start recording, I ask you if is there anything that you'd like to highlight in this discussion, if it's anything that it's happening in these times that we are living in, which are very complex.
Yeah, it's true that the time is very complex, and for me, as a leader of a small company based in France, I can see very easily the necessity for our politicians to support a more European battery projects. And I can see that if we are not able to do that, unfortunately, we are going to be way behind the Chinese and the American countries who have the much longer strategies for renewable energy, for security of energy, for the willingness to invest a lot of money in securing this energy. And unfortunately, in Europe, we don't have the same kind of support. And this is really my key message for these 30 minutes that we are going to have together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Is this because much of today's conversation around batteries is still centered around lithium? And what do you think we're asking? Do you think we're asking the right question when we talk about the future of energy storage?
First of all, the questions are always right. You have only bad answers or the wrong answers. So yes, energy storage is extremely critical. We realize that because artificial intelligence, which is very demanding in terms of energy, and by the way, starting to create some issues in the USA because it requires a lot of energy. So we don't have enough in a lot of states in the USA, and also a lot of demand on the water reserves, which is creating a lot of issues with the local communities. So clearly, the artificial intelligence is creating a lot of issues. The electrification of things that started 20, 30 years ago is putting a lot of pressure on resources to create enough batteries for energy storage and also electric vehicles and all the great smartphones that we're having. And for that, there are a lot of questions where to do that, how to do it, and with whom. And especially for me, the biggest question is, do we want Europe to be part of this evolution, or do we want to not to be a leader, but to react to this market evolution or to this big trend on a worldwide basis? And the way I look at it, unfortunately, Europe missed a great opportunity 10 years ago by having and supporting a lot of battery projects in Europe. So when I speak about support, it's not only initial support where a government will give a few or too little financial help to some young companies, but to really support them along the process. I'm not for a socialistic state. Clearly, I'm really a capitalist, but I believe that the governments have the obligation to protect the people, to protect the companies, and for that, the best way is to secure the future of the companies and of the people. And for that is less dependence on some countries, especially the Far East, and to make sure that we have support from government with it could be some kind of import duties, it could be some financial financial long-term incentive. It could be capital participation on some projects to make sure that not only private investors have the risk for this very long-term project. Something that I need to add also is for our young company, we are a startup company producing material for zinc batteries. We have some short-term needs of capital, but also we have some very long-term needs of capital. The short-term needs are pretty easy to address with private investors, venture capitalists, business angels, also help of government. But for the long term, you need to have investors that are much more strategic, that have a long view investment in order to support a project for 5 or 10 years. And we saw that very, very well with Northvolt. That was a great project, a great company, great people, great leaders, great management. And they had a great support, a lot of interest initially. And then they started to be in the death zone, what they call the death valley, where for a period of time, sometimes it can be a few years, sometimes it can be for many years, the company, they are struggling to stabilize the production, to stabilize the quality. So during that time, they cannot generate some sales. And because they cannot generate some sales, they cannot generate cash. And if the government or if some strategic investors with a long-term view are not willing to continue to give or support financially this project, the company or the project collapse. And we saw that very clearly with Northvolt. And for me, as a European who really believe that in Europe we have some great opportunities to industrialize, it's very painful to see that. So for Europe, there are some great opportunities. The government, they should, and also strategic investors should have a much more long-term view. And that is going to help us to really compete against the Far East and to compete against the USA.
So it's not too late to change things.
It's never too late, but it's going to be much more difficult. When you see that currently China has 86% of the lithium battery production capacity. They have around 60 to 70% of the market share globally with their lithium battery technology. So if you want to have in Europe a gigafactory project to build up a lot of capacity against the Far East competition, investors will be very reluctant because they say you are too late, you missed the boat. It's going to take you 5 years or 7 years to really ramp up the production, to ramp up the quality. And it's a too risky project. So for us, we are not willing to do that. And this is what's happening currently in Europe. I don't see too many announcements of great investors and great companies willing to increase lithium battery or battery capacity. So yes, it's never too late. I'm positive. At the same time, the more we wait, the more difficult it is. Because the Far East, especially the Chinese, they have a great technology. They started 20 years ago. The Koreans also are extremely strong with their technology. They have a lot of capacity. So you are facing a lot of challenges as a European company. So that's the reason I really believe that politicians should really protect this project not only for 1 year or 2 years, for 5 years or 10 years. I really believe that import duties on some very specific topics, specific materials should support also this European project. I really believe that sovereignty of materials going, or this material going into the batteries should be much more put foreground, meaning so that people should realize that to make a battery in Europe, you need to have a lot of materials produced also in Europe. So all these projects also should come to light in a much brighter way in order for investors, government to really support this project. There are some great universities, great talents in Europe. So that makes me very positive. But unfortunately, for this huge topic, electrification of things, I really believe that government needs to support us. And again, I'm not a socialist. I'm not for central government, not at all. But at the same time, I believe that the governments have a role to play. I was lucky enough to go to Columbia University in New York, and one of my professor was Professor Stiglitz, that won a Nobel Prize for economy. And he spoke a lot about globalization, the good things and the bad things, and how to make globalization work. There are some great opportunities, and I believe that I recommend the European politicians to read his books and to try to help projects such as ours, projects such as ACC, the Vercors, and all the other great battery projects across Europe.
Maybe the battle is not lost yet because we can also look at the rapid expansion of AI as an opportunity,
Yeah.
to be more focused and stay focused on the industry of batteries.
Yeah.
But how is this changing the role of energy storage? And what are maybe the new requirements that it
Yeah.
creates for battery technologies? Because this is
Yeah.
where companies
Yeah, correct.
has a
So,
role.
yeah, uh, when you look at the demand of data centers on a global basis, it's around 300 gigawatt hour, 300. To produce 1 gigawatt hour capacity in terms of data centers with the buildings, all the computings and so on, is around 50 billion US dollars. So it's a huge amount of money. In China, they are investing a lot. In the USA, they are not investing. They are investing a lot. In Europe, clearly, we are way behind, and we don't invest a lot. So the liter that we produce in Europe, we have to make sure that when you start to spend 50 billion US dollars equivalent in euro for European project, you have to make sure that you de-risk as much as possible the infrastructure. And for that, one of the big trends that you are going to see more and more is the OEMs who are building the data centers will be more confident to use different technologies other than lithium batteries because they need to avoid the risk of fire, the risk of thermal runaway, the risk of explosion. And the good news is, even in Europe, there are some good chemistries, battery chemistries, that are lowering or reducing or negating the risk of fire into data centers. And this is actually what we are doing with our raw materials, is to work on a zinc battery technology to make sure that the data center doesn't catch on fire.
Mhm.
So that is one big trend to try to make data centers safer in terms of fire, because if not, insurances will have an issue to ensure this kind of projects. Local authorities will have an issue to give the authorization to build the data centers, because they say, okay, there is the risk of higher electric prices, there is a risk of too much water consumption, and on top of that, there is a risk of fire. And everybody knows when there is a big fire in a data centers, it's extremely complicated to extinguish the fire. So if we are able with the different battery chemistries to reduce the risk of a fire, it's going to be easier for these data centers, at least partly, to be built. Also, to give another trend that I see in Europe for this artificial intelligence, there is a huge need of batteries. And even when you start to look at alternative of batteries, actually the capacities are very low. There is a great French company called Tiamat. They make sodium batteries. These sodium batteries, they are still flammable because they use some electrolyte that have some components, some solvents which are flammable, but still they are safer than lithium batteries. And Tiamat, this French company, they want to put in the future 5 gigawatt hour capacity, which is nothing. When you start to look at the 100 gigawatt hour capacity that you need in Europe. So, and for us, when we look at the future capacity, it would be for perhaps a 10 to 20 gigawatt hour in terms of material for gigawatt hour for batteries of zinc. So that means even though you look at the alternative of lithium batteries across Europe, there are not enough projects such as Tiamat, such as ours, to provide to the market, to provide a solution to these data centers OEMs to say lithium, it's okay, it's flammable, it's risky, and us, we can provide you with a better alternative. And so it's our responsibility for companies such as ours to really put on the market very quickly a lot of capacity. And for that, again, we need to get much more support from the government, financial support, not only nice discussion or speeches, but really financial support, not only shorter, but also for the long term, to really increase a lot of capacity. A lot of people, they speak about supply chain security, sovereignty. Yes, you can do it, but you need to commit for the long term. And in Europe, they need to commit money. They need to review what is the priority. I know in Europe they speak a lot about defense. We realize that we are in a very weak position in terms of defense, and for electrification of things, we are in a very weak position. So politicians, they should need to decide what they want to do with Europe. Clearly, there are some investors that are willing to follow. You have some great leaders, great entrepreneurs that are willing to follow, but they need also the support. The support of the government also.
What I'm hearing is also that safety, you've talked about safety a lot here. And it looks like safety is evolving from a technological feature to a strategic requirement. Is this right?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, because when you have a new technology, it takes many years actually to stabilize it, to really fully develop it, stabilize the quality, and to be able to ramp up, to scale up this technology. And I believe that the zinc batteries is clearly in a phase where we proved that the technology works, we proved that the technology is safe, and that we are able to scale up. And one great example is Zinc, which is a great company in the USA. They installed more than 2 gigawatt hour in data centers with their battery, which is huge quantity. So that means zinc battery, they work on data centers. And if these data centers are willing to use them, that means price competitive, they are price competitive, that they are able to bring a value in terms of what is the cost of the battery compared to the advantages of using this technology in terms of fire, because the risk of a fire, there is a cost associated with this risk of fire. So when they start to take everything in consideration, they realize that actually zinc batteries are able to bring a value to these data centers. And the best example is to look in the USA, 2 gigawatt hour of installed battery zinc installed in data centers.
Mm-hmm. Which other applications do you think are currently underestimated when we are talking about zinc batteries?
Yeah, so when you start to look at all the different subsegments for energy storage, approximately 30 to 40% is for critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure, it could be hospitals, it could be governmental buildings, it could be companies or big factory plants that need to have security of supply in terms of energy. That depends on energy renewable projects, local, okay? And for that, they need to have a lot of batteries, either to source their needs, energy needs, or to regulate the demands between the low peaks and the high peaks of the energy demands. Or if not, as a security, if there is a shortage of energy, no more electricity from 1 second to another, to have some battery to be able to put quickly into the system or the company electricity. And these backups, this UPS, uninterrupted power supply, has a big role in critical buildings. Currently, a lot of these needs are addressed by lithium batteries, but unfortunately, it's not safe. It's always a big issue of fire risk. Insurances don't like it. The battery or the factory owners don't like to have a risky chemistries of batteries into their plant. It's a big liability. So they are always looking for some alternative. And the zinc batteries are really bringing solutions for critical infrastructure where you need to store energy in a very sensitive environment. For example, if you would have a safe battery technologies, you could imagine a lot of roof in the center of a city full of solar panels with a lot of batteries underground under these buildings, such as zinc batteries, to be able to collect this energy from the sun. But currently, you don't want to do that because you have huge packs of lithium batteries in the center of Paris. It's way too dangerous. You could also imagine to have, like for the grid supply, because that is a big thing where sometimes when there is too much demand or not enough demand, you need to be able to regulate these peaks. And that requires also some batteries, and they need to do that really outside the cities because inside the city it will be too risky. So you could imagine a lot of factories which are regulating electricity, that are producing electricity also in the cities. For example, hospitals, if there is a shortage of power, they use diesel generators. Great technology, but it's polluting. This is not the future. To have a lithium batteries in a hospital, there was a study. They were saying that these lithium batteries were emitting some waves that was disturbing also the electronics of the hospitals. So there was a risk associated with this issue. Hospitals, they have a huge issue of electricity, and we saw that when in Spain, when they had last year some issues with the blackout with the hospital, they didn't know what to do with the patients. Hospitals is a big issue. The defense is also a big issue. In a lot of environment, they don't want to have a fire. So batteries is always a risk. So if they could find a better alternative, they would do it. Currently, they use lead acid batteries. Lead acid batteries is a great technology. You can recycle 95% of these batteries, but it's lead. And the whole industry, they spent 30 years to try to make these lead battery technologies safer. So at the end, it's more or less you build up some kind of bunkers to be able to put batteries in case that something happens. And this is not the solution. So the solution would be to have from the beginning chemistries of bacteria that you can secure the supply more easily, especially in Europe, chemistry that do not catch on fire, chemistry that can be more easily recycled. So from the beginning, it's the choice of a chemistry that has to be selected. And then later on supported by investors, by governments to say this is the way to do it, and let's help the companies, entrepreneurs to increase production capacity. Yes, and that's yes. So that's more or less.
Clearly, there is a change. There is a huge change, huge need change in narrative when it comes to the emerging technologies. And because 30 minutes are not enough for
Ah.
this topic, we will have to close. But hopefully, you will come to our podcast again. You will be our guest in the next future. Um, and looking to the next future, what changes do you hope to see in Europe's energy storage landscape? And of
So
course, your company, what will be your role of your company in these changes?
yeah, so it will start with many more projects of materials, like companies such as ours, willing to invest and to bet in the future of Europe. So many more material companies based in Europe. That it will be my dream in 5 years or 10 years. It will be a politician that are thinking more long term than short terms, making sure that 70% of the money collected in Europe does not go to the USA, because this is what's happening. 70% of the money collected in Europe, sovereign, whatever the source of this fund, goes to investment in Europe. So I would like much more than 30% of the money collected in Europe stays really in Europe, investing in Europe. And for us, yes, in 3 years, our plan is to have capacity, big production capacity, to be able to go into these zinc batteries for critical infrastructure. Data centers, defense, very important for us. That is really the top market where we think we have a chance in Europe against the Far East competition. Yeah.
Jean-Luc, thank you again for joining us today at the Sustainable Living Podcast. And until next time, we hope to see you again with in a more positive landscape when it comes to zinc batteries.
And you know that the future belongs to us and depends on us. So if we are not willing to do something and improve the future, we cannot complain about the existing situation. This is what's happening, what I'm doing, me and my team, and also the investor that we're having to try to change the future to make it better. This is our goal.
Thank you for your work then.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Yeah. Bye bye, Nicoleta.